Hi, I'm Michaela Blackburn, and this is Summary 2, which is chapters 5 through 8 of our text, which is where of our all of this information is referenced to. So chapter 5 was all about entrepreneurship. So it's SMEs that are firms that could possibly turn into MNEs. They're small, less than 500 in the US or 250 in the EU. Entrepreneurship is unexplored opportunity. So finding something new and exploiting on that and going with it. And the entrepreneur is the people who are discovering this. Then you have international entrepreneurship, which is entrepreneurs that are proactive and seeking new things and their product across the border. And then you have social entrepreneurship, it's hard to say over and over, which is behavior looking for social goals to benefit people. And then you have corporate entrepreneurship. These are established firms that are being innovative, proactive, that is their culture, so like Google. And people really don't talk a lot about corporate entrepreneurship because they always think it's just a brand new company, but not necessarily. This is a model of entrepreneurship from the industry, resource, and institution base. So of course with industry we have the rivalry, the entry barriers, the bargaining power of suppliers and buyers, and then the substitutes. And then resource-based considerations, value, rarity, immutability, organization, and institution-based, which the formal restraints and the laws that are governing if they can even do this or not, and then informal ones such as culture, value, and norms. So the industry-based, you have inter-firm rivalry, so impact. This is a huge impact if the startup will even make it at all, depending on what rivalry there is in the industry. Then you have entry barriers. Usually entrepreneurs go for low entries, like restaurants are a low entry barrier. And then you have bargaining power of suppliers. It's too large for me to grow quick to keep up. So for instance, Priceline, dealing with the big hotel names like Hilton. And you have bargaining power of buyers, so need to reduce this. So if you think of small publishers putting their books onto Amazon, it's reducing the bargaining power of the buyer. Substitutes, great opportunities. You need to redefine the game. So Uber did this in the taxi and transportation industry. They redefined everything, and it really messed up the taxi industry. Resource base. You must create the value. That's all dependent on your business model, and that's something huge that investors are going to look at, is your business model. Resources must be rare. If everybody has it, nobody's going to make money. That's obvious. Resources must be immutable. Resources must be organizationally embedded. So you pivot, flexible, and creative, you revise goals, and competing with large firms. Entrepreneurs don't have the advantage with the tangible resources like large firms have. Chapter 5, institution-based. So entrepreneurs have formal and informal constraints. So the development is uneven. Formal institutions can make or break an entrepreneurship. So if there's some regulations, kind of like the taxis and Uber, certain countries, they said, we're not letting any unlicensed car do this, so they couldn't for a while. Things like that will make or break an entrepreneur. Globally, some countries are trying to reduce the constraints and get some more entrepreneurship because they see that it can do good things for the economy. And then culture norms affect that. So if you have a collective society, high uncertainty, there's going to be less entrepreneurship. There are 5 entrepreneurial strategies. Growth, use underutilized resources, so use intangible vision when short on that tangible, which when you're short on capital, you need to use the intangible resources. It just goes over blue ocean, which is unexplored, that's where you want to be. The red ocean, you don't want to be there. That's where there's price wars, and it's very hard for an entrepreneur to survive there at all. Innovation, this must be the heart of the mindset. Network, create and tap into relationships. That's huge in entrepreneurship. You have to tap into those networks. And then you have financing and governance. So you need capital produced by angels, which are those wealthy investors, or venture capitalists. Those are the early investors, banks, foreign entrants. You need a lot of different things go into play here. And then your harvest and exit. So this is sell equity stake to outside strategic investors. This increases your value, so that's a good harvest. But then you give up ownership and control, which is hard for a lot of entrepreneurs. You could sell to other private owners or business. You usually take a discount, so that's hard too. You don't get as much money, but maybe you have a little more control. You could also merge with another company. Again, you're going to lose independence. And eventually the owners just may have to leave altogether depending on how it's working. There's also IPO, initial public offering, so you can publicly trade the company, the stock. The advantage of this, you have the financial stability, so you have people investing, you have stock options, and you can incentivize your employees. And it also makes the idea that the firm has made it because you're an IPO. Disadvantages, you're in the financial market. It's very volatile. This can not be good depending on how it goes. Members lose a majority control. So you have loss of privacy, things like that. And then the last exit option is bankruptcy, which laws differ globally, so that's something to look at if you were to do that, but that's the last option of an exit. Internationalizing entrepreneurial firm. So a born global firm startup attempts to compete international from the get-go, which can be very hard. SMEs entering foreign markets, so you have direct exports, usually selling homemade products to other countries. Or you can have licensing and franchising, manufacturing patents, corporate logos, stuff like that. Or we have our FDI. This is better able to control how the technology is used. And then we have WOS, or strategic alliances with foreign partners, acquisitions, so lots of different ways for internationalizing. And then you can internationalize without leaving your home country. You can export indirectly, you can be a supplier of foreign firms, license or franchise of foreign brands, alliance with partner of FDI, or you can harvest and exit through sell-off. And then you have some debates about those things, but I'm going to skip that due to time. And then strategic implications. So identify the gaps and opportunities with the industry. Internationalize the needs, balance of bold and not too bold. Leverage resource and capabilities. Push for institutions that promote entrepreneurship. So those are huge things to look at when being an entrepreneur. Chapter 6, entering foreign markets. So there's liability of foreignness. This is the disadvantage you have in host countries due to your non-native status. And this can kind of make or break when you're entering. You need enormous amounts of resources to succeed. You basically need to be bulletproof. And a lot of companies don't understand that when they go for this. Propensity to internationalize. Don't rush it. What is the motivation? Your size of firm, size of domestic market, what it looks like. Again, we have the industry, resource, and institution things to consider when entering foreign markets. So industry-based, so you have your rivalry again. Industries try to match foreign entries even if they lose money. High entry barriers can cause competition abroad. Which there are high entry barriers. Bargaining power of suppliers. You have backward vertical integration, which is multiple stages of the value chain. The bargaining power of buyers, and this is the forward vertical integration. So example is Apple having own stores instead of retail chains that have price concessions. And then substitutes is a huge incentive to go abroad. Resource-based value. So high value is going to increase your success. That's kind of obvious. Rarity. Patented products are sold aggressively overseas. Can you imitate it? If so, probably not going to want to go abroad. Organization, bundle resources and capabilities of strong complementary assets to design to go forward. Institution-based, you have formal constraints. These are huge. Your regulatory risks, your government, your trade barriers, your tariffs, your currency risks. I could go on for hours on that. Enter where, so you have strategic goals. Locations is specific advantage in a certain place. So you have geographic advantage, agglomeration. So you have clustering of economic activity in one spot. If you're a certain industry, you want to go there. You should match your strategic goals with the location that you're in. So like Silicon Valley is a good example of this. If you're innovating and stuff, that's where you would go. And match your goals to that. And then you have culture. Again, you have differences. Culture it's a huge, huge thing to look at where you're going to go. Wins, you have your first movers and late movers. There's advantages to each. So first movers, you have like the Apple iPhones. You get to build relationships with people. You have intense domestic competition. You avoid the clashing with dominant ones at home, but you're there first. That can be a risk. Late movers kind of ride off the first movers' investments. You can see their mistakes and things like that. How do you enter? So you have scale of entry, amount of resources it takes to enter a foreign market. There's disadvantages to this. Limited strategic flexibility. If you're wrong, it's a huge, huge loss. And you have small entries. These are less costly and you kind of learn by doing. And then you have longer foreign firms stay in host countries, so there's less liability there. You have modes of entry, which is equity versus non-equity, and there's a lot about this in the text. So non-equity modes are modes of entry that do not involve equity, so like exports and contractual agreements. Equity modes, JVs and wholly owned subsidiaries are usually what you see in this. Ownership advantage, you directly own the assets abroad. Your removal of market relationship between the importer and the exporter. Internationalization advantage, so replace market relationships with internal organization. Then you have OI, which is ownership, location, and internationalization. And that's a big advantage too. So this shows how more of modes of entry graph that I found really helpful. And then also the choice. So this is a graph I also found helpful. It goes through the exports, non-equity modes, and then you've got licensing, turnkey projects, R&D, co-marketing, and then you have equity, which is your JVs and your wholly owned subsidiaries. So second step in making the selection, managers consider the variables. Entry mode, export. And the next step in non-equity modes, are you going to license or franchise? Turnkey, R&D, co-marketing. Equity mode, are you going to be a JV? Are you going to be a whole WOS, greenfield operation? Those are all things that need to be considered. These are the debates, but I'm going to skip them due to time. There was several of those. Strategies, utilize, offset, understand, and match. Those are the big things for entering the markets. So strategic alliances, agreement that two firms will cooperate and work together. You have non-equity based, again, we talked about that already. You can have constellations, which is multiple firms that make alliances. And another good graph of strategic alliances and networks. So your industry base, again, we're going over rivalry. So some firms who normally compete create strategic alliance, which is a horizontal alliance. This is BMW and Mercedes-Benz. They formed a joint venture to do a ride share, and this competes with Uber. Then you have high entry barriers, deter individual firms. So combine two firms together, it's easier to enter the market. Upstream vertical alliance with firms on supply side can reduce bargaining power firms can collaborate with their suppliers. And then you have downstream vertical alliances. This is firms in